Fear Switch, The Heart of Cali by Elton Thomas. Chapters 25 through 30. Chapter 25, The Clash of Two Worlds. The forest clearing was filled with the rhythmic sound of clashing wood and steel as Andrew and Baus moved in a deadly dance, their figures illuminated by the dimming light filtering through the trees. Baus's carbon steel sword glinted with each swing, each strike aimed to overpower, to slice through Andrew's defenses. And though Andrew's face remained calm, each movement of his body showed the intensity of his focus, the subtle strength behind every flutter and flap of his cali sticks. Baus's frustration grew with every strike that met only the solid resistance of Andrew's sticks, undamaged and resolute. His movements became erratic, his anger flaring as he tried to break through Andrew's calm composure. With a fierce growl, Baus lifted his sword high, aiming a vicious swing toward Andrew's side. In a swift motion, Andrew sidestepped the attack, raising his stick in a controlled flutter, redirecting the blade and neutralizing the force. But Baus was relentless. Fueled by a surge of fury, he pivoted, bringing his sword down in a harsh arc aimed at Andrew's arm. This time, Andrew could not fully evade it. The blade grazed his forearm, slicing through the fabric of his sleeve and leaving a thin line of red in its wake. The crowd gasped, their hearts seizing at the sight of blood. Lori felt a shiver of fear course through her as she tightened her grip on Max's arm, her eyes wide with worry. But Max, sensing the need to rally, shouted, "Come on, Andrew!" "You've got this." His voice rang through the clearing, filled with a determination that cut through the tension. Stacy and Thomas joined in, their voices echoing with fierce support. "You can do it, Andrew!" Stacy cried, her tone filled with unshakable belief. Their cheers filled the air, a swell of encouragement that washed over Andrew, grounding him, giving him a renewed sense of purpose. Andrew straightened, his gaze shifting to his students, their faces alive with hope, their voices a reminder of the principles he held close. He met Baus's gaze with renewed resolve, his eyes steady, a quiet strength radiating from him. And this time, as Baus lunged forward, Andrew chose not to flutter the attack away. Instead, he stepped forward, channeling his focus into his right arm as he raised his stick in a powerful flap, meeting Baus's sword with an unyielding force. The sound of the impact echoed through the clearing, sharp and final. In that instant, Baus's sword shattered under the blow, fragments scattering across the ground, leaving him with a single weapon. Baus stared at his broken sword in disbelief, his breath coming in short, ragged bursts as he looked up at Andrew, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. Andrew's expression remained calm, yet his gaze was intense, his resolve unbroken. With his remaining sword, Baus lunged again, his movements filled with a last, desperate fury. But Andrew's focus was complete, his body grounded as he met the attack head-on. He raised his cali stick in another powerful flap, striking Baus's remaining sword with a precision that left no room for error. The second sword shattered, the shards falling to the forest floor, leaving Baus defenseless. Silence filled the clearing as the impact of what had just happened settled over everyone present. Raja's men exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence shaken, the assurance of their leader's strength beginning to crumble as they watched the scene unfold. Baus staggered back, his breath labored, his chest rising and falling as he looked at his empty hands, his face twisted with a mixture of shock and frustration. He glanced over his shoulder at Raja, a silent plea in his eyes, but Raja's expression remained cold, unmoved by his disciples' defeat. With a sharp, commanding tone, Raja spoke, his voice carrying a bitter edge. "Baus, get on your knees." Baus hesitated, his gaze shifting between Andrew and Raja, his face a mask of confusion, fear, and anger. But the weight of his loyalty, the years of conditioning, pressed down on him, and slowly he sank to his knees, his head bowed in submission. Raja stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Andrew with a look of contempt, his posture rigid as he gestured toward Baus. "Finish him, Andrew," he commanded, his voice laced with disdain. "You've proven your point. Now do what must be done." Laurie's heart pounded as she realized the depth of Raja's cruelty, the way he would discard his disciple so easily, expecting Andrew to stoop to his level, to use violence to assert dominance. She glanced at Max, who shook his head, his eyes filled with pleading, hoping against hope that Andrew would not fall into Raja's trap. Andrew looked down at Baus, his expression softening, filled with a compassion that seemed to pierce through the tension in the air. Instead of raising his sticks, he extended his hand, offering it to Baus, a gesture that held not just forgiveness, but a chance for redemption. "Come with me, Baus," Andrew said, his voice steady, filled with a quiet strength. "You don't have to live this way. You don't have to follow a path of violence." Baus looked up, his face a mask of disbelief as he stared at Andrew's outstretched hand. Years of loyalty, of unquestioning obedience to Raja, had defined him, shaped him. But here was a man who, instead of punishing him for his defeat, offered him a way out, a chance to escape the chains that had bound him. Raja's face darkened, his voice low, filled with a cold fury. "Andrew, if you do not finish him, I will. He is my disciple and he has failed. Show him no mercy, or he will know my wrath." But Andrew's gaze remained on Baus, his hand unwavering, his resolve clear. "You have a choice, Baus," he said softly, his tone filled with understanding. "You can continue on this path, or you can walk with us, a path that seeks strength in peace, in resilience." A flicker of doubt crossed Baus's face, a momentary hesitation as he looked between Raja and Andrew, his eyes filled with the weight of years of loyalty, of fear. And then, slowly, tentatively, he reached out, his fingers brushing against Andrew's hand, his grip firming as he allowed Andrew to help him to his feet. Raja's fury was palpable, his voice cold as he stepped forward, his tone laced with venom. "You are making a mistake, Baus. Walk away now, and you betray everything I have given you, everything I have taught you." Baus met Raja's gaze, a new strength in his eyes, a resolve that had been absent before. "What you taught me, Raja, was how to be strong. But I see now that strength is not in violence, not in domination. It is in standing for something greater." Raja's face twisted with rage, his fists clenching at his sides. He looked to his men, his gaze demanding, but they remained silent, their confidence shaken, their loyalty uncertain as they watched Baus step away from their leader's shadow. With a calm dignity, Andrew turned, his gaze meeting Laurie's, Max's, Thomas's, and Stacy's, a silent communication passing between them. Together, they moved forward, forming a united front as they walked away from the clearing, from the shadows of Raja's influence. Baus followed, his steps hesitant at first, but growing more confident with each stride, the weight of his decision lifting from his shoulders. As he joined them, Laurie offered him a small, encouraging smile, Max giving him a nod of respect, Thomas and Stacy walking alongside him with quiet acceptance. Behind them, Raja's face remained a mask of fury, his gaze locked on their retreating figures, his authority challenged, his power diminished. And though his men stood around him, they too felt the shift, the uncertainty that lingered in the air, the knowledge that something profound had changed. Andrew and his students disappeared into the forest, leaving the clearing, leaving Raja and his world of dominance behind. In that moment, they knew that they had not only won a battle, but had broken the chains of violence, setting Baus free, and reinforcing the strength of Cali. Chapter 26. Building Trust, a Newcomer in the Dojo. The air in the dojo was thick with a cautious tension, the usual ease and camaraderie now edged with quiet curiosity and uncertainty. The students moved around the space, their routines slightly altered as they cast hesitant glances toward the figure at the back of the room. Baus. He stood slightly apart from the others, his broad frame imposing, his posture straight but lacking the relaxed fluidity the students of Cali carried. Baus felt their eyes on him, each glance a silent question, a mixture of suspicion and wariness that pressed down on him like a weight. He shifted his stance, uncomfortable under the scrutiny, his shoulders tense, his hands fidgeting as he avoided their gazes. This dojo, so different from Raja's, was a world unfamiliar to him, and as he looked around, he couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. Andrew, sensing the tension in the air, approached Baus, his expression calm, welcoming. He moved with his usual ease, his presence grounding, a reminder of the principles that held the dojo together. Standing beside Baus, he spoke in a gentle, reassuring tone that held a quiet strength. "You're welcome here, Baus. You don't need to prove anything. This isn't about skill. It's about learning a new way to channel your strength." Baus glanced at Andrew, a flicker of gratitude crossing his face. He nodded, though he couldn't hide the doubt in his eyes, the shadow of his past still clinging to him. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've only known one way to fight. Cali. It's different." Andrew's gaze was steady, filled with an understanding that eased Baus's discomfort. "That's why you're here," he said simply. "Cali isn't about abandoning strength. It's about finding balance. It's a way to harness your power without letting it control you." Baus nodded, his face thoughtful, as he processed Andrew's words. He knew this path would be a challenge, a battle against instincts ingrained in him from years of training under Raja. But there was something about Andrew's calm belief in him, his quiet confidence, that gave Baus a spark of hope, a sense that perhaps he could find a new way forward. Andrew turned to the other students, gesturing for them to gather around. Their expressions were wary but respectful as they approached, their eyes flicking between Andrew and Baus with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Andrew addressed them in a calm, steady tone, his gaze moving from face to face. "Today, we welcome Baus to our dojo," he began, his voice warm but firm. "Each of you has experienced the journey of Cali, the growth and resilience it brings. And Baus is no different. He has chosen to walk a new path, to embrace the principles we hold dear." The students exchanged glances, their expressions softening as they took in Andrew's words. They trusted Andrew, respected him, and if he believed in Baus, then perhaps they could as well. Still, a hint of wariness lingered, the shadow of Baus's past casting doubt over their acceptance. Andrew turned to Baus, nodding encouragingly. "Let's start with the basics," he said, his tone gentle but purposeful. "Focus on the rhythm, the flow. Cali is not about overpowering. It's about control, about moving with intention." Baus followed Andrew's lead, his movements tentative at first, his body tense as he tried to mirror the fluidity of Andrew's stance. He felt the weight of the cali stick in his hand, so different from the cold steel he was used to. The lightness of the wood was almost unsettling, a reminder of the philosophy it represented: strength without aggression, power tempered by restraint. Andrew demonstrated a series of flutters, his stick moving through the air in smooth, controlled arcs. He moved with grace, each motion precise, a dance of subtle power. Baus watched, mesmerized by the ease with which Andrew flowed, the quiet strength that radiated from him. "Try it," Andrew encouraged, stepping back to give Baus space. Baus took a deep breath, steadying himself as he lifted his stick. He swung it forward in a flutter, the movement rough, unrefined. The stick felt foreign in his hand, the rhythm awkward, a stark contrast to the aggressive strikes he had once mastered. He could feel the tension in his grip, the tightness in his shoulders as he struggled to let go of the instincts ingrained in him by Raja's teachings. Andrew observed him with a calm patience, his gaze gentle, reassuring. "Loosen your grip," he advised, his voice soft. "Let the stick move with you, not against you. Baus adjusted his hold, relaxing his fingers as he tried again. The stick moved more easily this time, the arc smoother, though still rough around the edges. He glanced at Andrew, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, but Andrew's encouraging nod gave him the confidence to continue, to push through the discomfort. As the lesson progressed, the other students began to warm to him, their wariness fading as they saw the effort, the humility with which Baus approached the unfamiliar techniques. Max and Stacy moved closer, their expressions curious, supportive, their presence a quiet reminder that he was not alone in this journey. Max offered him a small smile, a gesture of camaraderie that eased the tension in Baus's shoulders. "You're doing great," Max said, his tone sincere. "It took me a while to get the rhythm, too. It's different, but it feels right once you find it." Baus returned the smile, a spark of gratitude in his eyes. He appreciated the kindness, the acceptance that Max offered so freely, and it gave him a sense of belonging that he hadn't felt in years. Stacy, standing nearby, nodded in agreement, her gaze filled with warmth. "Cali is about finding strength in yourself," she added, her tone gentle. "Not in how hard you can hit, but in how well you can control it." Baus listened, their words resonating with him, filling the gaps that Raja's teachings had left. He felt a quiet strength growing within him, a new understanding that strength could be gentle, that power could exist without violence. And though the path ahead was still uncertain, he felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that perhaps he could embrace this new way. As the lesson continued, Andrew led them through a series of paired exercises, guiding Baus in refining his flutters and introducing the concept of flaps. Baus moved slowly, his motions hesitant, but growing steadier with each attempt, his body beginning to absorb the rhythm of Cali. There were moments when his instincts took over, when he reverted to the sharpness of Raja's techniques, his movements too aggressive, too rigid. But Andrew was patient, gently guiding him back to the fluidity of Cali, reminding him to let go, to trust in the gentler strength. With time, Baus began to find his footing, his body adjusting to the new rhythm, his mind opening to the philosophy that underpinned each movement. The students watched, their initial wariness giving way to a growing respect as they saw the dedication, the sincerity with which Baus approached the art. By the end of the session, Baus was exhausted, his body sore, his mind stretched. But there was a sense of accomplishment, a quiet pride that filled him. He glanced at Andrew, a look of gratitude in his eyes, and Andrew returned the gaze with a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the progress he had made. As the students gathered their things, preparing to leave, Baus lingered, his gaze drifting around the dojo, the space that had become a sanctuary for him, a place of renewal. Max approached him, a warm smile on his face. "You did great today," Max said, his tone filled with genuine admiration. "It's not easy changing like this, but you're doing it." Baus nodded, a flicker of humility in his expression. "It's different," he admitted, his voice quiet. "But it feels like something I needed. Like maybe this is the place I've been looking for." Max's smile widened, a look of understanding in his eyes. "It's a place for all of us," he replied, "and we're glad you're here." As Baus watched the students file out, his heart felt lighter, the weight of his past loosening its hold. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace, a hope that maybe, just maybe, he could build a new life here, one grounded in the strength and resilience of Cali. And as he looked around the quiet dojo, he knew that he was ready to embrace this journey, to walk this path alongside Andrew and the students who had welcomed him, not as an enemy, but as a friend. Chapter 27. Baus's Redemption, Shadows of the Past. The days at the dojo began to take on a rhythm for Baus, a pattern of slow, steady progress that felt like a quiet balm after the storm of his past. As he watched Max and Stacy move with an ease that seemed both natural and hard-won, he found himself moved by their dedication. There was a spirit in them, a kind of resilience that went beyond the physical, and as Baus tried to absorb the principles of Cali, he saw a depth in Max and Stacy that his former life had dismissed outright. Under Raja's brutal eskrima teachings, Max and Stacy would have been disregarded, labeled unworthy without a second thought. Raja had taught Baus to view strength in a narrow, unforgiving way, but here, Max's careful control and Stacy's gentle persistence redefined strength in ways that struck Baus deeply. He watched Max approach each movement with a measured calm, saw how Stacy's small hands gripped the cali sticks with quiet determination, and felt a quiet admiration grow within him. One morning, Baus sat on a bench outside the dojo, taking in the stillness of the early light filtering through the trees. He closed his eyes, breathing in the quiet, letting it settle over him like a balm, calming the restless edge that had followed him for so long. But even as he tried to embrace the peace, memories surfaced, unbidden and relentless. Images of the brutality he'd once embraced under Raja's teachings, of the pain he'd inflicted in the name of strength, flashed through his mind. The familiar tension crept back into his shoulders, a reminder of the darkness he had left behind. "Boss?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts, and he looked up to see Stacy standing beside him, her face open and filled with a gentle curiosity. She tilted her head, studying him with an innocence that brought a faint smile to his lips. "Are you okay?" she asked, her gaze steady, unguarded. Baus nodded, but he could feel the weight of the lie in his chest. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked away, his gaze drifting toward the trees, as though hoping they might offer him an escape from the past that still lingered like a shadow. Stacy sat down beside him, her posture relaxed, her hands resting in her lap as she looked out at the trees with him. "I think about things a lot, too," she said softly, her voice filled with an understanding that surprised him. "About how people see me. But Andrew and Max tell me that what other people think doesn't matter as much as what I think. And I think you're pretty strong, Boss. Just maybe a different kind of strong than before." Her words settled into him, a warmth that melted the cold knot of doubt in his chest. He looked at her, her expression so open, so free of judgment, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he could be something more than the sum of his past. Later that day, he joined Andrew in the dojo, practicing his movements, trying to find the fluid rhythm that Cali demanded. Each swing of his cali sticks, each flutter and flap he attempted, felt like a step away from the darkness, a small redemption in the repetition of movement. But even as he practiced, even as he poured himself into each motion, he could feel the weight of his past tugging at him, a reminder of the man he had once been. The afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the floor when Andrew approached him, his calm gaze steady, filled with a quiet wisdom that seemed to see through the walls Baus had built around himself. "I can see you struggling," Andrew said gently, his voice like a balm. "It's not easy to let go of the past, especially when it's woven so tightly into who you think you are." Baus clenched his jaw, his grip tightening on the cali sticks as he looked away, shame burning in his chest. "Sometimes I don't think I deserve to be here," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've done things, hurt people in ways that can't be undone. I don't know if I can just change." Andrew placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him, reminding him of the warmth and acceptance he had found here. "Change isn't about erasing the past, Boss. It's about finding a way to carry it without letting it control you. You have a choice now, a chance to build something new. And that takes a kind of strength that most people never even consider." Baus looked up, meeting Andrew's gaze, a flicker of gratitude breaking through the doubt in his eyes. Andrew's words settled into him, a quiet encouragement that echoed through the silence, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this journey. But that evening, as Baus made his way home, the comfort he had found in Andrew's words was shattered by a group of familiar faces waiting for him near the edge of the forest. 3 men, all former followers of Raja, stood in the shadows, their expressions hard, their postures filled with a quiet menace that reminded Baus of his past life. One of them, a tall, wiry man with a scar cutting across his cheek, sneered as Baus approached. "So the mighty warrior has fallen," he mocked, his voice dripping with contempt. "Following that weakling Andrew now, are you? Trading in strength for, what, peace? Pathetic." Baus felt a surge of anger flare within him, an instinctive reaction to the threat, to the familiarity of the darkness that had once ruled his life. He clenched his fists, the old, violent impulses rushing to the surface, a temptation that gnawed at him, urging him to retaliate, to show them that he hadn't lost his edge. But then he thought of Max and Stacy, of the way they had looked at him with trust, with acceptance. He thought of Andrew's words, the calm reassurance in his gaze, the belief that Baus could be more than the sum of his mistakes. And with a deep breath, he forced himself to let go, to release the anger that threatened to consume him. "I'm not that person anymore," he replied, his voice steady, though his hands shook with the effort it took to hold himself back. "Andrew has shown me a different path, a path that doesn't need violence to prove strength." The man sneered, his expression filled with disdain as he took a step closer. "You think you can just change? You think following Andrew makes you any less of what you are? You're fooling yourself, Baus. People like us, we're built for violence. It's in our blood." Baus held his ground, his jaw clenched, his heart pounding as he fought to keep his resolve. He could feel the temptation, the pull of his old instincts, the desire to prove himself, to show them that he was still strong. But he knew that giving in would mean undoing everything he had fought for, everything that Andrew, Max, and Stacy had come to believe in. "You're wrong," he said quietly, his voice filled with a quiet determination. "Strength isn't in violence. It's in choosing peace, in choosing to walk away." With that, he turned his back on them, his step steady as he walked away from the shadows of his past, from the darkness that had once held him captive. He could hear their mocking laughter behind him, the taunts that followed him, but he held his head high, refusing to let their words break him. When he returned to the dojo that evening, Andrew was waiting, his expression calm, understanding. Without a word, Andrew nodded, his silent support a reminder that Baus was not alone in this struggle. As the night settled over the dojo, Baus sat with Max, Stacy, and Lori, their presence a balm that soothed the doubts still lingering within him. And as he looked at them, he felt a quiet peace settle over him, a belief that perhaps redemption was not about erasing the past, but about choosing a new way forward, one step at a time. Chapter 28. Raja's Retaliation. A Gathering Storm. The air was thick with tension at Raja's camp, hidden deep within the forest's densest shadows. Enraged by Baus's defection, Raja paced before his followers, his expression twisted with fury. His once calm demeanor had shattered, replaced by a bitter resolve that cast a dark shadow over the group. The camp was alive with the sounds of steel clashing against steel as Raja's followers practiced strikes, each swing filled with aggression, each block sharpened by hatred. Raja moved among them, his presence commanding, his gaze cold and unyielding. He had trained these men to embrace the brutal philosophy of eskrima, and now he intended to mold them into weapons against Andrew and everything Cali represented. To Raja, Baus's betrayal was a wound that ran deep, an insult that undermined his authority, a threat to the legacy he had spent years building. The idea of a dojo that embraced peace, that allowed students like Max and Stacy to train and grow, filled him with disgust. In his eyes, Andrew's teachings were weak, an insult to the purity and strength he believed eskrima demanded. Raja's voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. "Andrew's dojo is a stain on our art," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the men gathered before him. "He has corrupted what was once powerful, allowing weakness to fester under the guise of peace. But we know the truth. We know that strength comes only through dominance, through fear." His words stirred a murmur of agreement among his followers, their faces hardening with shared anger, their postures filled with a readiness to fight. Many of them had been drawn to Raja through fear and intimidation, compelled by his uncompromising philosophy, his promise of power through violence. And now, Raja intended to use that power to dismantle Cali once and for all. He stopped before a group of new recruits, his gaze narrowing as he assessed them. "If you follow me, if you are loyal to our art, then you must be willing to do what is necessary to reclaim its purity," he said, his tone chilling. "There can be no mercy, no compromise. We will bring Andrew and his dojo to their knees, and we will remind them what true strength looks like." The recruits nodded, their faces a mixture of fear and determination, their loyalty sealed by the intensity of Raja's presence, the threat of what would happen if they failed him. Raja knew how to instill fear, how to bend others to his will through intimidation, and he wielded that power with the precision of a master. In the days that followed, Raja's numbers grew. Word spread through the community, whispers of his intentions reaching every corner, carrying with them a sense of dread. Those who sympathized with Raja's brutal ideals flocked to his side, eager to be a part of the reckoning he promised. And those who hesitated, those who feared him, were forced to choose between loyalty and safety, between standing against him or succumbing to his threats. Meanwhile, at Andrew's dojo, the atmosphere had shifted. The students sensed the growing storm, the whispers that reached their ears filling them with a quiet unease. It was in the way they moved, the way their eyes lingered on the door, as though expecting Raja's men to appear at any moment. Conversations that had once been light-hearted now held an edge of tension, and laughter had been replaced by the silence of fear. Max noticed it first, the way the younger students cast anxious glances at each other, their postures tense, their movements lacking the usual fluidity of their training. He looked to Andrew, a silent question in his gaze, a plea for reassurance. But Andrew's expression remained calm, his focus on grounding his students in the principles of Cali, even as the shadow of Raja's threat loomed closer. One afternoon, Andrew gathered the students together, his voice calm but steady, filling the quiet space with a sense of presence that eased their unease. "I know you've heard the rumors," he began, his gaze moving from one student to the next, his tone carrying a quiet strength. "Raja is not happy with what we've built here, with the path Cali has taken. But I want you to remember this. We did not come here to fight his battles. We came to find strength within ourselves, to learn that true power lies in control, not in violence." The students listened, their expressions a mixture of fear and admiration. They trusted Andrew, respected him, and his words offered them a small comfort, a reminder that Cali was a sanctuary, a place of peace. Max felt a swell of pride as he listened to Andrew, his admiration for his teacher deepening. He knew that Andrew could sense the fear among them, that he could feel the tension that Raja's threat had stirred. But instead of allowing that fear to consume them, Andrew was guiding them back to the teachings that defined Cali, grounding them in the philosophy that had brought them together. After the gathering, Baus approached Andrew, his face a mixture of guilt and determination. He had heard the rumors, too, had felt the weight of Raja's anger, and he knew that his defection was a large part of what had sparked this retaliation. There was a heaviness in his gaze, a sense of responsibility that gnawed at him, a fear that he had brought this threat to their doorstep. "Andrew," Baus began, his voice filled with remorse, "this is My fault. I know Raja. He won't stop until he's torn down everything you've built here. Maybe it would be better if I just... Andrew stopped him with a raised hand, his expression filled with a quiet understanding. Boss, you didn't bring this upon us, he said, his tone gentle but firm. Raja's anger is his own, a product of his beliefs, his need to control. You chose a different path, one that takes strength, and that choice is worth defending. Boss nodded, though the doubt lingered in his eyes, the weight of his past pressing down on him like a shadow. He looked around at the students, at the faces that now looked to him with a mixture of wariness and respect, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to protect the place that had become his sanctuary. Max approached Boss, a look of empathy in his gaze, his tone filled with quiet encouragement. We're in this together, Boss. Cali is stronger than Raja's anger. Andrew has taught us that strength doesn't come from fighting. It comes from standing together, from believing in something bigger than ourselves. Boss looked at Max, a spark of gratitude breaking through his doubt. Max, despite his challenges, embodied the resilience, the quiet strength that Cali represented. And in that moment, Boss felt a shift within himself, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he could be a part of something good, something worth fighting for, not with violence, but with resolve. As the days passed, rumors continued to swirl, whispers of Raja's growing numbers, his promise to destroy Cali spreading through the community. The students grew more vigilant, their movements more cautious, their eyes constantly scanning the shadows as they trained. But Andrew remained steady, grounding them in the principles that had brought them together, reminding them that they were not defined by the threat, but by the strength they had found within themselves. Lori and Stacy watched with a quiet worry, their bond with the dojo deepening as they stood by Andrew, Max, and Boss, their presence a silent support that filled the space with warmth, a reminder that they were not alone. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the floor of the dojo, Andrew gathered the students together once more, his gaze steady, his voice filled with a calm conviction. I won't lie to you, he said, his tone serious but gentle. Raja's intentions are clear. He wants to destroy Cali, to dismantle everything we have built. But we will not meet his violence with violence. We will stand firm, rooted in the principles that define us. Cali is a place of peace, of resilience, and that is what we will hold on to. The students listened, their fear giving way to a quiet resolve, a shared understanding that they were stronger together, that their unity was a force that Raja could not break. And as they stood there, side by side, each one felt a sense of purpose, a belief that they were part of something greater, something worth defending. The storm was gathering, the threat looming closer, but in the heart of the dojo, a quiet strength had taken root, a resilience that would carry them through whatever lay ahead. Chapter 29. Preparing for the final confrontation. The dojo was alive with a renewed energy, a determination that pulsed in the students' movements as they trained under Andrew's careful guidance. Though a quiet tension hung in the air, an awareness of Raja's looming threat, there was also a sense of purpose, a belief that they were preparing for something bigger than any one of them. Andrew stood in the center of the room, his presence calm, but charged with focus, as he guided his students through a new series of movements. The traditional flow of Cali was still there, the flutters and flaps that spoke of control, of balance. But today, there was a sharper edge to their practice, an emphasis on resilience, on the ability to defend without surrendering the principles that defined their art. Max moved with a new level of intensity, his face set in quiet determination as he mirrored Andrew's movements, his grip on his cali sticks firm but fluid. Beside him, Stacy followed with equal focus, her smaller frame moving through the motions with a grace that belied her strength. She had grown under Andrew's guidance, her movements now infused with a quiet confidence, a resilience that radiated from her as she practiced each flutter, each flap, her sticks moving with purpose. Baus, however, stood slightly apart from the group, his posture tense as he watched Andrew, his gaze focused, yet troubled. The movements, the philosophy, everything Andrew taught went against the fighting instincts ingrained in him, instincts he had honed under Raja's brutal philosophy. To fight without aggression, to defend without dominating. It was a contradiction he struggled to reconcile. Andrew noticed Baus's hesitation, the conflict visible in the tightness of his shoulders, the grip of his hands around the sticks, which were too rigid, too filled with the tension of his past. Andrew moved over to him, his expression calm, patient. "Let the movement guide you, Baus," he said quietly, his voice gentle but firm. "Cali isn't about overpowering. It's about control, about finding strength in the flow, not in force." Baus looked down at his hands, his grip loosening slightly as he nodded, though the doubt remained in his eyes. "It's difficult," he admitted, his voice filled with a frustration that he couldn't fully hide. "I've spent years learning to fight in a way that leaves no room for peace. And now—" Andrew placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "That's why you're here. You've taken the first step by choosing to walk away from that past. Now it's about learning to trust in a different kind of strength." With a deep breath, Baus adjusted his grip, letting the tension slip from his shoulders as he followed Andrew's guidance, moving through a series of flaps, his motions growing smoother, more controlled. As he practiced, he felt a shift within him, a quiet resolve that began to replace the aggression that had once driven him. It wasn't easy, but with each movement, he felt a piece of the anger, the violence, slip away, replaced by something gentler, something that resonated with the core of who he wanted to become. Andrew gathered the students together, his calm presence steadying them, a reminder of the unity that defined Cali. "You've all made incredible progress," he said, his gaze moving from face to face, his tone filled with quiet pride. "And now, as we face this challenge, I want to give you something that will help you remember the principles we hold dear." He stepped to the side, revealing a row of newly crafted cali sticks, each one polished to a smooth finish, their surfaces gleaming under the dojo lights. The students exchanged curious glances, their eyes widening as they took in the sticks, sensing that there was something special about them. "These sticks are made from super-densified wood," Andrew explained, his voice steady, his gaze filled with a quiet reverence as he picked up one of the sticks, holding it up for them to see. "They've been crafted to be stronger than steel, designed not to shatter or splinter, even under pressure. But their purpose isn't to harm, it's to preserve peace, to preserve control, to remind us of the strength that lies in restraint." He passed the sticks out to the students one by one, each of them holding their new weapon with a sense of awe, their fingers tracing the polished wood, feeling the weight, the promise of strength within it. Max took his sticks with a sense of pride, his gaze filled with determination as he looked up at Andrew, a silent promise in his eyes that he would uphold the values Cali had instilled in him. Stacy held her sticks close, her expression serious, focused, her eyes reflecting the trust she placed in Andrew, in the teachings that had given her a sense of purpose, of belonging. She turned to Max, offering him a small, encouraging smile, and he returned it, a silent exchange of support that strengthened the bond between them. Baus took his sticks with a mixture of reverence and doubt, his gaze fixed on the polished wood, the strength he could feel within it. He knew the power they held, the ability to defend, to protect. But the memory of the violence he had once wielded haunted him, a reminder of the harm he had caused in the past. Andrew noticed the shadow in Baus's eyes, the weight of his hesitation, and he spoke softly, his tone filled with quiet reassurance. "These sticks are a symbol, boss. They hold the strength you need, but they also hold the reminder that true power lies in choosing peace. That is the legacy we carry with Cali Kai." The words settled over Boss, grounding him, a sense of calm filling him as he looked up at Andrew, gratitude and respect softening his expression. He nodded, a silent promise to honor the path he had chosen, to walk it with the integrity that Cali Kai demanded. As the training continued, Andrew led them through a series of self-defense exercises, each movement rooted in control, in restraint. He demonstrated how to deflect an attack, how to use a flutter to redirect force, a flap to absorb energy without aggression. His movements were precise, filled with a grace that inspired the students, a reminder that strength didn't have to mean violence. The students mirrored his movements, their sticks moving in unison, their faces filled with focus, with the quiet determination that had come to define them. Max moved with a newfound ease, his posture confident, his focus unwavering as he practiced each flutter and flap, his movements a reflection of the strength he had found within himself. Stacy, too, moved with a gentle grace, her body relaxed yet strong, each motion a testament to her resilience, her commitment to Cali Kai. She felt the power within the sticks, the promise of protection, of peace, and it gave her a sense of purpose that went beyond the physical, a belief in her own strength. Baus, despite his initial hesitation, found himself absorbed in the rhythm, his body adapting to the movements, each flutter and flap grounding him in the philosophy that had begun to reshape his life. He felt the temptation to fall back into old habits, to meet force with force, but he pushed through it, letting the principles of Cali Kai guide him, a reminder that strength could exist without harm, that power could be a tool of peace. As the session drew to a close, Andrew gathered the students together, his gaze filled with pride, with a quiet resolve that mirrored the unity he saw in them. "Raja's threat may be real," he said, his tone steady, filled with a quiet strength. "But we are stronger together, grounded in the principles that define us. Remember that Cali Kai is not about fighting to win. It's about standing firm in the belief that peace is worth defending." The students nodded, their faces set with determination, their trust in Andrew and in each other unbreakable. They knew that the path ahead would not be easy, that the threat Raja posed was real, but they also knew that they had found a strength within themselves, a strength rooted not in violence, but in unity, in the quiet power that came from choosing a different path. As they left the dojo that evening, each of them carried the weight of the sticks with a newfound respect, a belief that they were more than just weapons. They were symbols of the resilience they had built, of the peace they had chosen, a reminder that strength was not defined by power, but by the integrity with which it was wielded. And as they stepped into the gathering dusk, the shadow of Raja's threat looming over them, they felt a quiet resolve settle within them, a belief that, together, they could face whatever lay ahead, knowing that they carried with them the legacy of Cali Kai, a legacy of peace, of strength, and of unbreakable unity. Chapter 30. A Peaceful Alliance, Community Support. In the days that followed, a quiet determination began to take root among Andrew's students, blossoming into something larger than any one of them had anticipated. The news of Raja's growing influence had spread beyond the dojo, reaching the wider community, and the atmosphere in town shifted as whispers of the brewing conflict filled the streets. But rather than giving in to fear, Lori, Max, and Thomas felt a new sense of purpose, a belief that they could do something to help. Lori, always a grounding presence, gathered Max and Thomas at the kitchen table one evening, a spark of determination in her eyes. She was tired of the fear that Raja's name carried, tired of seeing the uncertainty on her son's face each time he returned from the dojo. They had built something beautiful with Cali Kai, a philosophy of peace, of resilience, and she was determined to protect it, to help it flourish. "Raja may have power," she began, her voice steady but filled with quiet resolve. "But we have the community. We have people who believe in what Andrew is doing, who see the value in Cali Kai and what it stands for. If we can rally them, if we can show them the strength that lies in unity, maybe we can build a peaceful resistance." Max nodded, his face brightening with hope. "Andrew's taught us that strength doesn't come from fighting, it comes from standing together. If we can get people to support Cali Kai, maybe we can show Raja that his way isn't the only way." Thomas, who had seen firsthand the impact Cali Kai had on his daughter Stacy, felt a surge of pride as he looked at Lori and Max, their expressions filled with determination. "I know a few people who would want to help," he said thoughtfully. "People who care about this community, who want to see it thrive in peace, not fear." They began making a list of community leaders, people who had shown an interest in local causes, who might be willing to stand by Cali Kai's mission. Among the names were Dr. Raymond Hill, a psychologist who had long advocated for programs that supported at-risk youth, and Councilwoman Maya Torres, a strong-willed leader with a passion for cultural inclusion and unity. The next day, Lori, Max, and Thomas reached out to them, explaining the situation, the threat that Raja posed to the dojo, and to the peaceful philosophy they had come to embrace. Both Dr. Hill and Councilwoman Torres listened intently, their expressions serious as they absorbed the gravity of the situation. When Lori finished explaining, Dr. Hill nodded, his face thoughtful. "I've seen the impact Cali Kai has had on Max and Stacy," he said, glancing at Max with a warm smile. "The principles of control and inner peace that Andrew teaches, those are the values our community needs. Cali Kai isn't just a dojo, it's a beacon of hope, a place where people can find strength without violence. I would be honored to support it." Councilwoman Torres nodded in agreement, her eyes shining with resolve. "This dojo has become a symbol of resilience, of unity. We need more places like Cali Kai in our community. If we stand together, we can show Raja and his followers that there is strength in peace, that our community will not be intimidated by fear." As they discussed ways to support Cali Kai, Torres's face lit up with an idea. "There's an event coming up," she began, her voice growing excited. "The Festival of Nations. It's a community celebration of cultural diversity, a gathering where we showcase traditions, talents, and philosophies from around the world. What if we invited Cali Kai to do a demonstration, to show everyone what it truly stands for?" Lori's eyes brightened, and Max's expression turned hopeful. The idea held promise, a way for Cali Kai to reach beyond the walls of the dojo, to share its philosophy with the community, to show that its strength lay not in aggression, but in resilience, in unity. "That's a brilliant idea," Thomas said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "It would give everyone a chance to see the true power of Cali Kai, to understand the values Andrew is instilling in his students. If people can see that strength doesn't have to come from violence, maybe they'll rally around it. Maybe they'll feel empowered to stand with us." Councilwoman Torres nodded, her face set with determination. "I'll make the arrangements. We'll give Cali Kai a place of honor at the festival, a platform to share its message with the community, and I'll make sure everyone knows what this dojo represents, that it stands for peace, for resilience." As word of the festival demonstration spread, excitement began to build among Andrew's students. The dojo took on a new energy, a sense of anticipation that filled their practice sessions with a renewed purpose. This wasn't just about preparing for a potential confrontation with Raja's followers. It was about showing the world that Cali Kai was more than a martial art. It was a philosophy, a way of life that offered strength without fear, power without aggression. In the days leading up to the festival, Andrew guided his students through the techniques they would showcase, each movement a testament to the core values of Cali Kai. He demonstrated the smooth arcs of the flutters, the controlled precision of the flaps, emphasizing the balance between power and restraint, between action and intention. Max practiced with quiet determination, his movements becoming more fluid, more grounded with each session. He felt the weight of the upcoming demonstration, the importance of showing the community what Cali meant, not just to him, but to everyone who had come to see the dojo as a place of refuge, of strength. Stacy, too, moved with a quiet confidence, her focus unwavering as she mirrored Andrew's movements, her cali sticks moving in harmony with her body. Baus, though still grappling with his past, felt a growing sense of purpose. He knew that this demonstration was an opportunity to show not just the community, but himself, that he had embraced a new path, a path defined by peace, by control. He practiced each movement with a solemn dedication, letting the rhythm of Cali guide him, ground him. On the day of the festival, the community gathered at the park, the air filled with the sounds of music, of laughter, of voices mingling in celebration. Colorful booths lined the walkways, each one showcasing the unique cultures and traditions that made up the community, a testament to the diversity that enriched their lives. When it was time for the Cali demonstration, a hush fell over the crowd as Andrew and his students took their places at the center of the park, a stage set up beneath a canopy of trees. Councilwoman Torres introduced them, her voice filled with pride as she spoke of Cali mission, of the strength it represented, the values it upheld. Cali is more than a martial art, she told the crowd, her gaze sweeping over the faces watching with anticipation. It is a philosophy, a belief that true strength lies in resilience, in peace. Today, they will share with you a demonstration of that strength, a reminder that power can exist without violence, that unity is our greatest defense against fear. Andrew stepped forward, his face calm, focused, his presence a grounding force that filled the stage. He held his cali sticks with a reverence that spoke of the respect he had for the art, for the philosophy that defined it. He began the demonstration with a series of flutters, his movements smooth, precise, each motion a testament to the control, the balance that lay at the heart of Cali. Max and Stacy joined him, their movements synchronized, their faces filled with quiet determination as they moved through the techniques Andrew had taught them. The crowd watched, captivated, their expressions a mixture of admiration and awe as they took in the grace, the power that radiated from each movement. Baus stepped forward, his posture steady, his face filled with a resolve that spoke of the transformation he had undergone. He moved with a careful precision, each flap and flutter a reminder of the journey he had taken, the strength he had found in letting go of aggression, in choosing a path defined by peace. As the demonstration continued, a sense of unity filled the crowd, a belief that they were witnessing something profound, something that went beyond the movements of martial arts. They were witnessing a community that had chosen to stand together, to embrace a strength that was defined not by violence, but by resilience, by the courage to stand firm in the face of fear. When the demonstration ended, the crowd erupted in applause, their faces filled with admiration, with a newfound respect for the philosophy that Cali represented. Andrew and his students bowed, their faces shining with pride, with a belief that they had shown the community a different kind of strength, a strength that lay in unity, in the choice to embrace peace. As they left the stage, Councilwoman Torres approached Andrew, her face filled with pride, with gratitude. "That was incredible," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "You've shown everyone here that Cali is a force of peace, a symbol of resilience. Raja's influence will falter in the face of what you've built here." Andrew nodded, a quiet satisfaction in his gaze. Cali isn't just a dojo. It's a community, a belief that we are stronger together, that we can face any challenge if we stand as one. And as the festival continued, the community's support for Cali grew, their unity a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the face of fear, they could choose a path of peace, a path of strength defined not by power, but by resilience, by the belief that they were stronger together.